Hello, everybody. Today I want to discuss something I see quite consistently when I work with people that have lost a loved one. Oftentimes they'll come into my office as a practitioner. I will hear their stress or their strain or their sadness or their guilt or their shame about not being there for somebody that they have lost. And I really want to give you some insight onto how that actually works a little bit. And again, if this resonates, great. If it doesn't, just toss it out. But in my opinion, in working with death and dying and being able to see on both sides of the veil, when we are going through that very human, by the way, natural tendency to feel like I have to get there, I have to be there when that person is dying, I want to be at bedside or I want to make it to the hospital. This is a very egoic situation where it is about us trying very stressfully to get there on time. And if we don't make it, oftentimes we will feel really bad about this, oftentimes for very, very many years, which will then only induce more pain into our existence. And sometimes that pain, by the way, turns into a dis-ease within my own body long after I've lost my loved one, which doesn't do me any good in an emotional, much less physical way. So I'm trying to help people understand here that this isn't necessarily the way that it works. So when I am in a dying situation, oftentimes I am connecting with my benevolence, my loved ones that have passed on, my angelics, my beings of love and light. And that isn't necessarily apparent to anybody other than myself. And so oftentimes when we're so sad or distraught that my loved one has died alone, that isn't necessarily even the case, because depending on my belief systems that I go into the death process with, yes, definitely I will have help. I, by the way, will have help regardless. My belief system will open up the amount of help that is available to me or obvious to me during this death process. So one of the things that we want to remember right out of the gate while we're alive and well is really examine your own belief system on what it means to die. Who's going to be there? Am I going to be, brought into the so-called light or brought over to heaven or whatever that belief system is with loved ones that I've already lost? Or is there going to be angels? Or is my favorite pet going to be there? Because all of these belief systems that we carry when we are walking around alive will be the actual stage that my death plays out like. So this is very important for those of you that are sitting here alive and well right now, is to really examine those belief systems. So now back to the loved one that has gone through that process and I didn't get there in time. This is really something important for us to understand, because that didn't get there in time stress is really about me. And it's really an egoic stance on I needed to be there to support that person. And in essence, that's not necessarily even true, because that person will die in the way that they are choosing to, from what we would call a soul contract, meaning that the higher perspective of that soul in alignment with what they came in to do and actually experience aligns who is or is not there when I die. And this isn't predetermined fate. It's just part of my so-called soul contract. Now, if I didn't get there in time and my brother did, for example, does that mean there's a value system that my brother was better and should be there and I can't and shouldn't be there? And as far as these contracts go, no, this is all very 3D kinds of thought processes. The way that this works is, from a higher perspective, quite possibly that brother that was in attendance needed to be there from his participatory soul contract, that there was a lesson to be shared or learned there. And quite possibly from your higher soul's contract, you didn't need to participate in that so-called lesson or experience. So letting ourselves off of that hook is really important, because we do have our ego tied up in here. When I need to be there or should have been there, I seem to, for some reason, feel like I am going to assist in this death process and make it better or some way for my dying loved one. And that isn't necessarily the case. We need to, if we choose to, understand that that higher person is being taken care of by their benevolence. They are being guided. There is help and assistance along the way, and it doesn't necessarily always come in human form. So the basis is no one dies alone. No one really technically, energetically dies alone. alone. What we do is we go back to an omnipresence in terms of our energy becomes one again in a transmutation. And within that transition and that transmutation, I become one again with all of the other forces out there, that meaning angelics, my loved ones that have passed on, and yes, sometimes even my pet. So we need to really examine what is behind these belief systems and really understand that if I didn't get there in time, that didn't prohibit that death process from being quite magical and a miracle in and of itself. We need to undo that personality attachment to someone's death, because this is really all about an omnipresence. The great thing that we can learn from omnipresence is that when that person is in that death process, they have the ability to what we call merge with the one, become omnipresent, go anywhere and everywhere in any form that they want to. And this is why, by the way, oftentimes we will feel like I'm halfway across the country and I just had that feeling that grandma was dead. And sure enough, then I got the phone call that she was. This is because we call that an omnipresent flyby or a visit or a soul connection. When I am in that death process, I don't necessarily need this meat and bone body to do that connection anymore. It's a heartfelt telepathic connection of this omnipresence and this oneness. So if you are one of those people that has had that situation ever, and that knowing that I've lost somebody, or gee, it feels like so-and-so is gone, or something's happening with grandma, all of those are flyby situations of omnipresence, meaning that soul just connects on a heart form. This is an indicator and a validation of what actually happens during that death process. So this, I hope, gives those people that have held on to, oh my goodness, I didn't get there in time, and shame on me, I should have been at bedside, and all of those guilty things. I didn't even have time to go to the bathroom, and then he or she left. All of these things that we hang on to in ego form can be released when we start to really understand and honor the concept of omnipresence. And yes, they were with me in the car on the way to the hospital, or halfway across the country, or whatever the case may be. So hopefully this starts to alleviate for some of you out there that may have thought that concept of I have to get there, or geez, I didn't get there. All of those guilty situations or those stresses, hopefully this can be alleviated by understanding the beautiful and the wonderful and the magic of omnipresence during the death process. And so until next, cosmic hugs.